Yeah, let's do this thing. I think this video should probably be pretty interesting, to say the least. But this video just went live, I believe, 38 minutes ago. Smell that freshness. Let's do a reload there. Let's see what's going on. An Israel-Palestine solution, question mark. Let's see what old Johnny Boy, as the other, not me, him, has got to say about this. Play the damn thing.
Welcome to the Daily Show. I am your host, Jon Stewart. This is the third episode. This is my third episode. The first two, very controversial. A lot of discourse around it. A lot of carping back and forth. A lot of anger. A lot of commentary. Tonight, I'm done with it. Tonight is perhaps an amuse-bouche, a trifle. Something light. Tonight, we discuss Israel-Palestine.
About time.
Are we? Who wrote this? Well, I legally have to read what's in the prompter, so here we go.
There we go.
We're going to take a look in our new and probably never-ending segment.
The Futile Crescent.
Yes! Somehow the audience knew, but tonight we discuss Israel-Palestine.
Oh.
Any discussion of Israel-Palestine is not meant to endorse or justify all the actions of either side. Mentions of Hamas that fail to condemn Hamas do not mean we don't condemn Hamas. Do not listen to this segment if you're predisposed to anti-Semitism or xenophobia. Common side effects of discussing the Middle East are depression, anxiety, infections of the perineum, and craving hummus.
You have to always give the disclaimer before you talk about this stuff.
This is an awful situation. We're coming off on 5 months of a brutal bombing campaign brought on by a horrific massacre and hostage taking, and we seem no closer to ending anything but the reigns of a couple of Ivy League presidents. Well, this weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finally laid out his plan for peace.
Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for complete demilitarization of Gaza, as well as Israel taking over security and controlling entry and exit points to Gaza.
So an occupation.
So your peace plan is a siege.
Yeah.
A military siege. You really think a military solution ends this cycle?
Brother, this has been going on for the last, where you been? I mean, I know where you've been. You retired. I'm sure you're watching the TV. Like, what why the question?
Victory is within reach, and you can't have victory until you
Okay, this dude's full of shit.
eliminate Hamas.
But, okay. But your plan to eliminate Hamas by destroying all of Gaza, doesn't that just make more Hamases?
Yes.
Is that the plural of Hamas? Hamasai?
One thing that not a lot of people talk about is there are multiple groups in Gaza, not just Hamas. There's like PIJ and like other militant factions. There are even more extremist, further extremist groups that exist in other towns that are not as big or do not have as much of a following as Hamas. It's easy when you control the narrative to be able to say we're going to eliminate the bad guy, and the bad guy being Hamas right now, and then giving that illusion to the public that, oh, we just need to do this one thing and this whole thing will be over. That's not the answer, because even if you were to eliminate them, like he's saying, another one would pop up, or you know what, one of the more extremist ones would actually just gain a bigger following, and then it would be you would have the exact same issue.
I mean, it's an idea. Palestinian liberation is an idea. Unless you have a bomb that kills ideas. Do you have a bomb that kills ideas?
Yes, they do.
I mean, how long would it even take to bomb the shit out of an idea?
The intense phase of the fighting is weeks away from completion. Not months, weeks away from completion.
Oh, dear God. If you insist on this plan, if you think that ends Hamas, I believe we in the United States have a banner you can use.
That's exactly what I've been saying. Mission accomplished. That's all this is just George W. Bush sitting on the fucking Navy ship saying mission accomplished, we got it done, and then you end up with like 17 more years of war. He's an idiot.
Wind damaged, but equally delusional. Look, the United States is Israel's closest ally. Israel's big brother in the fraternity of nations. Israel's work emergency contact.
Work emergency contact.
Maybe it's time for the U.S. to give Israel some tough moral love.
This is shameful. There has to be accountability for these war crimes.
No targeting civilians in war.
Stop the
Sounds
war
like they've been
crimes
doing
and
that kind of.
atrocities and end the.
Now, this is reading between the lines and taking a lot of things out of context, but more times than not, they have said the opposite of this. I think even not Jack Kirby, the other guy.
Today. It could happen right now.
Right now!
Where's the other
Thank
guy?
you! These atrocities
The other guy has said, yeah, we can't tell them what
So
to
I'm
do.
being told the administration was talking about Russia bombing Ukraine.
Oh,
I
Jesus
apologize.
Christ. Exactly.
Also a war crime. But I'm sure they're giving equally stern advice to Israel.
The Biden administration is urging Israel to be much more careful, to be more cautious.
Me.
How Israel does this matters.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
We want to see the government of Israel take steps to minimize civilian harm.
Be more
Yeah,
surgical
sure.
and more precise. Be more careful.
Hey, Israel! Take it to the next. Could you please be more careful with your bombing? It's good advice. But really, couldn't the United States have told Israel that when we gave them all the bombs? There are bombs. This is like your Coke dealer coming in with an 8-ball and going, don't stay up all night. Don't. Sleep is very important. You gotta sleep. You don't wanna. And breakfast is an important part of the day. So, look, the Israeli position doesn't seem so tenable. Perhaps I can find some diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position.
Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country.
Does that mean the annihilation of Israel?
Yes, of course.
I cannot find
You son of a bitch.
diplomatic leeway in the Hamas position. Well, this is
That's ignoring the current. Oh, right, whatever, man.
when we need
Ignoring
the
the
world,
current
the civilized
framework
world
of a
nations
resolution right now.
to come together and stop
They
this
backtracked
madness.
on those statements.
A resolution calling for an
you
immediate
go.
ceasefire in Gaza has just failed to pass.
A UN Security Council draft resolution to allow aid delivery has been vetoed.
Russia and China used their veto against an American resolution condemning Hamas.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza has failed.
Western nations voted against it.
It was delayed 4 times this week.
Draft resolution has not been adopted.
Who's the blame here? Is everybody to
Why
blame?
do you even have a f***ing building?
So somebody could bomb it, that's why.
Why do you? We could use that. We have a housing crisis. Give us back
True.
our f***ing building. This is not right.
Accurate.
What is the United Nations even? What are you, just a support system for a diverse and pleasing food court? What are you?
Peanut Pit, man, I haven't seen that in a while.
That cannot be the UN's food court, by the way.
Yeah, I guarantee you it is.
That is clearly just a mall in Long Island.
We have Italian representation right there.
Doesn't anyone care about the suffering of all these civilians? What about a good neighbor, Saudi Arabia?
The Palestinian cause is the Arab world's most important cause.
I want to see really a good life for
Maybe the people of Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Thank you. And while Saudi Arabia does not accept Palestinian refugees, and Egypt doesn't either, for that matter, the Saudis are the richest country in the region, and they've given. This can't be right.
How much?
On average, about $200 million a year to the Palestinians. Jesus, are you kidding me? The Saudis have given just as much money to Phil Mickelson. Is that true? I assume.
Wow.
I assume.
That's quite the comparison to pull
to
up.
promote
Yeah.
the equally important cause of the Mickelsonian people. So Israel, the United States, the United Nations, the Arab nations, no one seems to be incentivized to stop the suffering of the innocent people in this region. Now, I didn't want to bring this up, but there is another player. Small religious startup out of Bethlehem. I think it might have began as a carpenters union, but
Carpenters Union
has gotten big. Do they have a plan for the Middle East?
There will be the Battle of Armageddon. Jesus.
This son of a bitch. Look at this doughy boy. Man, you could knock him over and he would just like pop back up like the fucking inflatable clowns that you punch.
Christ is going to sweep over that battlefield and to annihilate that army of 200 million people. The blood will flow to the bridle of a horse.
You said 200 million people? Oh, fucking Christians. Jesus Christ, man.
So that's the plan for the Prince of Peace? Is that so?
Why don't you say Christians? He did not. Why didn't you say Christians at all?
So that's the plan for the Prince of Peace? Is that so?
Come on. Say Protestants, at least. At the very least, you could say Protestants.
I am not an equestrian expert, but if the blood goes all the way to the bridle, that's an enormous amount of blood, no? Unless,
Evangelicals?
Are we talking about the mini horses? Because that's still... It's a lot of blood, but more manageable. And adorable.
Yeah, that's adorable. Okay.
Look,
No.
I think we have to get real here. The status quo cycle of provocation and retribution is predicated on some idea that one of these groups is going to go away. And they are not. If we want a safe and free
And that's why the two-state solution does not work.
Palestine, we have to recognize that reality. And I know that there is a twisted and much contested history in the region that has brought us to this point. But we are at this point. And anything we do from here has to look forward. So tonight, lucky you, I'm going to do that with not one, not two, but a three.
What?
Solutions for peace.
Oh, three-state solution.
Along the shores of
the
Pleasant
U.S.
Lake
is in between all checkpoints.
Israeli
Got it.
and Palestinian teams are trading rockets for rackets. The goal of Seeds of Peace is to open these young minds.
Sorry, what?
Okay, that one hasn't been scaled up yet. And may take longer than we have. Unless we just bring the whole region to Maine. How fast can we make 14 million rackets? But
we got him, brother.
Offer. That was just one peace plan, people. Don't abandon me yet. Number two. Let's just ask God. It's his house. He's the one who started all this. Just ask God.
There he is.
He can tell us who is right. Is it the Jews? Is it the Muslims? Is it the Zoroastrians? If it's the Scientologists, a lot of us are going to have egg on our faces.
I think we're good.
But given God's lack of communication over this past, let's say, millennia.
The laugh.
All right. Here's another one. And heaven forbid I actually think this last one could work. Starting now, no preconditions, no earned trust, no partners for peace. Israel stops bombing. Hamas releases the hostages. The Arab countries who claim Palestine as their top priority come in and form a demilitarized zone between Israel and a free Palestinian state. The Saudis, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Jordan, they all form like a NATO arrangement guaranteeing security for both sides. Obviously, they won't call it NATO. It's the Middle East Treaty Organization. It's Me Too. Let's tweet it out. Me Too. Tonight.
Okay, yeah, that would work, but yeah, I don't think Israel would go for that.
People, let's get this region Me Too'd. Now, obviously, I have not worked out the exact verbiage, but anything is better than the cluster cycle we have now. Because honestly, what is the alternative?
Yeah, need to work on the verbiage.
The trump
for real.
of God sounds and the rapture happens. We're gone. In the twinkling of an eye, we're just simply not here.
Oh.
Poof indeed, sir.
Yeah, I'm not down for that one.
Poof indeed.
Fucking evangelicals, Jesus, man. Evangelicals need to chill. They need to, like, just tone it down a little bit. Did they post the next video? Yeah, okay, they did. Oh, they're good. They continue to talk about it. Oh, all right.
Please welcome senior writer at The Intercept, Murtaza Hussain, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Yair Rosenberg. Please welcome them.
See how this goes.
The audience, very rarely do you get a standing ovation for the guests, but clearly they think Muslim and Jew sitting next to each other? How can that be? But thank you both for being here. You are both, obviously, you're American writers that write a lot about the Middle East. The peace plan, the Stewart plan as I call it, the Me Too plan, and Murtaza, we'll start with you. How unrealistic is that? It's similar to a 2002 Arab League resolution. Why? Why can't this happen?
Well, you know, it's not a bad idea. And on paper...
We're going to cut there. Thank you so much. So appreciate that.
Well, you know, I think the problem is, I write about U.S. foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, and I feel that the consistent theme here is that when we give blank checks to countries which are clients or partners, we enable their worst tendencies or their worst behaviors. In this case, you know, you mentioned the Arab peace plan. In 2002, the Arab League offered Israel full political, economic, diplomatic normalization in exchange for the main crux of it is creating a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders, which is in line with international law and so forth.
Right.
They've reiterated,
and a repatriation plan, which...
And, I mean, that thing's totally fucked because of the settlements that have been going on. What are you going to do with all the people that are now settlers in the West Bank? Are you going to make them all move back into Israel? That would be the ideal solution if you want to do a two-state solution. It's illogical right now. The way things are embedded, it just doesn't make sense. I'll see what they come up with, but I already have my idea.
Which can be negotiated, the details of it, but that was the crux of it. And, you know, they've reiterated this plan many, many times, including recently. And it's not just the Arab world, the broader Muslim world as well, too. I interviewed the Pakistani ambassador to the UN a few weeks ago. He told me that Pakistan, Indonesia, other large population Muslim countries would be willing to normalize with Israel, but they do not want the Palestinians to be thrown under the bus. There needs to be a two-state solution, in their view, creating a state in those lines. Without that, they cannot be. But the Israeli government has never responded to this deal. It's not even rejected it. It's refused to engage. And I think the main reason is because they have the U.S. as a guarantor. Whatever they do, they'll have a superpower backing. And many people in Israel want the West Bank. And the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, has bragged that he's stopped the Palestinian state from coming into existence. And because they have this backing, they don't need to compromise with their neighbors or engage with their neighbors.
Do you think the U.S. backing of that enables this reticence?
I think the U.S. putting itself in this position, not just this position, many other situations where it acts as a blank check writer for its clients.
That it does.
It enables these situations.
Well, we got to make money somehow, and without selling weapons, what are we gonna fall
make
back
money
on?
off of dead bodies, man.
Yeah, you probably have a slightly different interpretation of that peace plan and also what we laid out here. So,
yeah, well, I think that
I mean, we're raking it in a sense that, yeah, we're writing checks not necessarily to Israel, but to the military industrial complex that provides all these weapons, that provides all the bombs. I mean, just a couple of years ago, we gave Israel, the IDF, 30,000 bombs plus, and they were all dumb bombs, or at least the majority of them were. But that's what they've been dropping on them, and shit, they've already run through the majority of that. It's really kind of crazy to see how quickly they can get through that munition. But the reason that we do that is so we can get rid of all of our old inventory and then get the military contractors like Lockheed Martin and GRP, whoever the hell it is, Boeing, Raytheon, all of those warmongers back into production and making new stuff. And then we say, oh, we used up all the old stuff, now we gotta make some new things. Hey guys, here's $1 trillion. Would you mind making some more bombs, please? And then, the money goes to all the people that have those wealthy positions, and then if not the executives that are wealthy, then the very select few that are able to work at those companies, if you can pass all the background checks and whatnot, to be a military contractor or to be under military contract. And then all the guys that went to college and actually used their degree to be like, scientists and, figure out what's the quickest way we can burn somebody alive with a bomb, and then package it into a 500-pound bomb that we can drop on somebody in the future that can hit a dime from a mile away. That kind of crazy stuff. It's a complete sham. It's just a money laundering complex is all it is, man.
And the idea is actually a pretty good one, which is that it puts some third party in between these two parties.
That's what seems like has to.
That would then be sort of like the referee. The problem is that while as you showed in your monologue, the Arab states are willing to talk a big game. The United States, and sometimes, depending on the administration, will also talk a big game. But no one actually wants to put their own troops down there. Can you imagine America under Democratic presidents who are retrenching from the Middle East, right, trying to get out of the forever wars? Or Donald Trump, who wants to turn America into some sort of isolationist country, get us out of, stops helping Ukraine, right? They're not going to stick Americans there, right? The Arab countries, no different. They'll give a token amount of money and then try to, make it go away. And so that's, I think, the fundamental flaw here. I will say that if you took away U.S. backing and said, Israelis, we're going to put some other people on your border, particularly, say, Arab states, and they're going to be the guarantors of your security,
yeah, they would fucking flip their shit.
We're just going to pack it up.
Right.
Because this is a country...
Nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah, and also this is a country that's full of people, right, who fled other countries, including those Arab countries, because they were persecuted, right, killed, dispossessed, right? There's half of Israelis are now Middle Eastern origin.
But two diasporas don't make a right.
Of course not. But they won't trust it.
But let me
okay, just because John says something, you motherfuckers don't have to clap, all right?
Both of these for just
Jesus Christ, man, let him talk. Let these people talk.
We get into this litigation of, the Palestinians and the Arab state, they propose something very reasonable to the Israelis, but the Israelis wouldn't do it. And the Israelis say, well, we don't have a partner for peace, and we propose something very reasonable, but they didn't do it. Doesn't it appear that no party is incentivized to fix this at the peril and detriment to the Palestinian people? And
John, they're colonizers. They're imperialist colonizers. Nobody wants them there. They came in 1948 and then started taking over shit. How is that okay? I understand the sentiments here, but I think today, especially this day and age, nobody likes the imperialist colonizer. I think we all recognize that. And if anybody recognizes that, it's the Middle East, because of the big glaring colonizer that is the state of Israel. Like, it is obvious to them, to the United States, the people in the United States. The whole imperialist colonization thing hasn't really been too obvious. I think it's been pretty well suppressed for however many hundreds of years, 250 plus, right? But yeah, I think it's talked about a lot more now as to, you know, this nation that's behind them right there was essentially invaded and then taken over. Whether it was the settlement of the 13 colonies and then spreading out from there, and then the French coming in, and then the Spaniards coming in. I mean, the Spaniards were kind of already there. And then the expansion of Manifest Destiny to take over the rest of the nation. Nobody likes a colonizer anymore, man. It's not cool. And you don't want to deal with people if they haven't been there for very long. I would say, you know, 70 years is probably not the longest time. Maybe you know, it's not a good idea to give everything up just because somebody came in and they were backed by the British, and they had, you know, an immense military arsenal that was handed to them. You know, that kind of sucks.
And here's what I mean by that.
Who would be friendly to
Egypt has its border closed to the Palestinians. These are autocratic states in the Arab world. They all view the creation of Israel as a humiliation. If that's where they start from, it's a very easy kind of issue to deflect attention from your own dictatorships, to own the so-called Arab street with anger towards Israel. But the Saudis, they all do business together.
With the United States, yes.
Aren't they disincentivized to fix this? Netanyahu, whenever he gets in political trouble, suddenly there's a war. So who is incentivized to actually fix this? And isn't the people who really suffer from all of it just the Palestinians?
Yes.
Who get no regard from any group, no real support.
You know, I think that was the case for some time, but I think that things have changed in the sense that the Arab countries are very eager to get this off their plate, actually. That's why they had this Arab Peace Initiative and keep reiterating it, because they no longer want to have a conflict with Israel. It's not in their interest. They like to move past it, but they cannot do so in a way which ignores the Palestinians. And I think that the idea of the Abraham Accords, for instance, was let's just sidestep this issue and make deals with the Emiratis and Saudis and so forth. I was in Saudi Arabia recently, and I was talking to a broad range of people. I think the idea that the Saudis will make a deal with Israel without a two-state solution or meaningful pathway to one or significant concessions on that subject is very unrealistic, because...
No, that's my point, is the two-state solution. But if nobody is there to just... Everybody has preconditions for everything. You know, Netanyahu, I need a partner. If you don't meet these certain conditions of no violence, I won't negotiate with you. Well, America occupied Iraq. And there was violence there the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if we had set a precondition that there'd be no Iraqi government unless, you know, this violence would end. Nothing would ever. It seems like nobody's actually being honest or genuine in the region about their aims.
I would put it a little differently, which is to say that the people who are
running
the
show. You're a scholar and I'm a comedian.
We'll see when it's done. The people who are running the show for some time, which is how we arrive at this disastrous destination, are these absolutist actors who they might say that we'll negotiate and here's a condition and here's, you know, whatever. They might say that to some people, but in practice we see from, you know, many years of Netanyahu governance, every single document and statement, as you showed, of, you know, people from Hamas, right? These are people who want everything, right? They see half of the people in the land as the problem. Right? And the question is how you negotiate.
The absolutists.
Yeah, the absolutists.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there are lots of people who are also pragmatists. And that's how we had a peace process that failed. But there were genuine majorities in the polls at the time among Israelis and Palestinians behind negotiations for two states. And so there always are those people. They might be a minority, they might be a majority at a given point in time. During a war right now, they're a minority. Right? But there's always those people who say this is not going to be solved with weapons. We need to find a way to live together. But we're not supporting those people.
How could it ever be solved if the United States and Israel, the two, let's face it, most hated entities in that part of the world, are the ones responsible for the peacekeeping effort?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. If the Arabs
You just summed up exactly what I just said a couple minutes ago.
Step in, if the Arab nations there, and couldn't you say that this was a great bulwark against the strength of Iran? Couldn't you convince UAE and Saudis that the only way to temper Tehran is by forming this alliance and recognizing them?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that the U.S. stance in the region that's very unpopular. I think it's related to this issue. This is the core issue of why the U.S. has not had normal relations with the Arab world and Muslim world generally. It's a very bitter and symbolic issue for a lot of people.
We do have normal relations.
Well,
we sell more weapons to the Saudis than we do to the Israelis.
On a public level, or only with dictators, for instance. The reason this democracy is very skeptical in the Arab world, we're afraid that regimes which are mad at us will come to power. But I think the main issue, I think from a U.S. perspective primarily, is that we're involved in this very bitter conflict. We're not taking it seriously in solving it. We take a very one-sided approach, I think, and we do that supposedly in Israel's interest, but I think what it does in reality is prolong the conflict indefinitely to everyone's detriment. I had come to the position that we should either be fair in this conflict and adjudicate it in a way which is fair and results in a just solution both sides accept, or we should leave. We should leave because it's impacting us in very, very negative ways. Militarily, economically, strategically. We have other problems in the world to deal with as well too. And I believe that if the US were to pull what I'd say is a blank check from Israel, it would incentivize Israel to compromise more.
Yeah,
because ultimately Israel has to live in the Middle East. That's where the country is. That's where the people are going to be. There are neighbors who are willing to compromise with us.
We could move them to Maine. Maine is wide open. They could play tennis.
Right. Okay, John. I mean, be serious, bro.
To that,
that's frustrating. No, that's fucking frustrating. He had a fucking point. Nah, man, that's not cool.
Economically, strategically, we have other problems in the world to deal with as well too. And I believe that if the US were to pull what I'd say is a blank check from Israel, it would incentivize Israel to compromise more. Because ultimately Israel...
Exactly. You need to defund the state. Defund the state, stop giving them bombs, stop giving them a ton of money, and then let them deal with it. They're either going to turn to another imperialist power and say, hey, give me money and bombs so I can bomb these guys, or they're going to try and figure out a fucking deal.
It has to live in the Middle East. That's where the country is. That's where the people are going to be. There are neighbors who are willing to compromise with us.
We could move them to Maine. Maine is wide open.
You didn't let him fucking finish, man.
Right.
That's annoying.
I hear your point, but
I see his frustration.
I do think that the idea that this is all about the United States, that we are the actor that drives all that, I think plays into a myth of United States control. And I think if we've learned anything in these last 20 to 30 years of the United States is we've got big influence, but we sure as hell don't have control. And I'm not so sure that by the U.S. changing its policy in certain ways, that solves this. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, John, that's a very controversial thing to say that the United States is not the main character of the entire planet.
Then I'm going to say you said it, and I didn't say it. That was him.
Okay. Because, this is...
U.S. changing its policy in certain ways, that solves this. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, John, that's a very controversial thing to say that the United States is not the main character of the entire planet.
Then I'm going to say you said it, and I didn't say it. That was him.
Okay. Because, this is not live, so maybe we'll cut that.
Yes, exactly.
But, that is clearly the case. There is this sort of sense that a lot of people have that the United States, and the president of the United States in particular, have the ability to sort of wave a magic wand and solve these things. If they could, there are multiple American presidents who would have done so.
Brother, what are you fucking talking about? There are multiple presidents that have done so.
Have changed the policies, and they would have tried, and there were always people in different factions in the State Department, and they tried different things. You go back to Eisenhower and Nixon; they all had plans, right?
Yeah, the plans, but as far as a fucking ceasefire, that shit happened several times.
They pressured Israel in ways that presidents today don't. But there's a reason why we moved in different directions, because they thought maybe if we are more involved. And one thing I want to say to this, though, is that a lot of people want to see a solution in the Middle East, but they also want to see the U.S. get out of the Middle East. And those two things are in contradiction. And people are ultimately going to have to make choices about what the U.S. does and doesn't do.
But you
I don't necessarily have the answer to that.
And not be so involved in the region. I do think if there is...
I mean, if anything, the United States has pushed their hand further into the fucking Middle East, and with the last 20 years of Afghanistan and Iraq, we've meddled as much as possible, man.
Point, if the Arab states form
I mean, we got bases in Syria. We've been doing attacks in Syria. We got bases in Iraq that the Iraqi government doesn't even want us there. There's a lot of problems that the United States causes by having a presence there. I think there's like 40,000 military troops in the area. We have a base in Djibouti. There's boots on the ground in Yemen that nobody talks about. It's insane how involved we are there.
Broader alliance with Israel in a genuine way, and that the United States wouldn't feel maybe that it had to be on the line there. Listen, I'm no fan of any of it. I think this cycle of violence over the 75 years is destroying the dreams of two people, not just the Palestinians. I think it's destroying the dream of the Israeli people as well. And
that doesn't seem like it, John. Not when they're posting all these happy videos of them, praising the bombs being dropped just a couple miles away. I wouldn't say that's exactly the idea. Sure, you have really large fireworks coming at you every now and then, but you have the Iron Dome that protects you from those. I don't see it. I don't see that statement.
What we're doing now clearly, and what we've been doing, is a cycle that we have to pull out of. And I imagine, that's the thing that ultimately has to happen. So thank you both for coming by. Murtaza Hussain and Yair Rosenberg. We're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk to them about one other thing. We'll put that offline. We'll be right back after this. We're back. We're talking to Murtaza Hussain and Yair Rosenberg. And
Glad I don't have to wait for commercials.
Some of the things that could help break the cycle of violence in the Middle East. The act of the two of you sitting here having this conversation is almost rebellious or revolutionary in the current moment.
Why?
How do you counsel Americans in this moment to be able to, not lose so many Facebook friends when it comes to all this? Is there any advice that you guys have?
They weren't friends to begin with, brother.
Well, the backstory of the two of us is that we've been having these conversations for something like 10 years. And the further backstory is that we reached out to each other on Twitter because we both realized that we shared a lot in common about how we approach the world, but we had very different opinions on issues like these. And that's how we became friends some 10 years ago, is it?
That's not that.
And so we've been doing this over, in kosher restaurants, because for Sunni Muslims, many of them, kosher meat is halal. And so I will take Murtaza to a kosher restaurant, introduce him to it, and then we'll have conversations like these. And John is just, interloping, just sort of, we decided to let him come.
The check.
There we go.
I'm picking up the check.
And so what it is we refuse to allow ourselves or our communities to be held hostage to a ruinous conflict thousands of miles away that we may never be able to fully resolve or fix. Right. But we can have an impact about how we treat each other here. Man. And the other thing, I would say is that we are both journalists, and one of the things that motivates us is our pursuit of truth and what is true. And we share that even when we disagree. It's because we came to different conceptions and we really believe the other is honest.
Yeah, it's well said. Well, ultimately, as Yair mentioned, we're journalists, and we seek out people's perspectives who are different from you, who see from a different world, who see the world from a different view, and then that's how you learn about the world a little bit. And I think I have to say that it's easier for us too, though, because we're not Israeli and not Palestinian. Ultimately, we're American, and we view it that way. Both of us know people.
You're talking to two Americans, man. Yeah, that's the difference. Is you're talking to two Americans right now. Of course, we're going to have, not as opinionated views. I don't know if either one of these guys have had family members that have died in any of the conflicts. But if you are there and you're experiencing a genocide or a starvation or a famine, that seems like it would sway your opinion a little bit more, and maybe you would have a much more strong opinion on what's going on. To the contrary, if you have family members that are in the IDF that are serving, or if you have rockets, Al-Qassam rockets coming at your apartment complex every other night, that might sway your opinion as well. they benefit from not being there. They benefit from being here in this imperialist nation. Well, I appreciate their conversation. I appreciate the way they're able to add nuance to it. It's just, this is not what you're seeing overall.
I think I have to say that it's easier for us too, though, because we're not Israeli and not Palestinian. Ultimately, we're American, and we view it that way. You know, both of us know people whose family members have been killed recently, many dozens in some cases in Gaza recently, and you know that emotional component.
Okay.
You can compartmentalize it when you're not so directly involved. So we look at it to an American perspective, two different sides of this issue in some sense, but we're able to have that conversation, which is constructive. What I would say, you know, I could accept any Palestinians' view or any Israelis' view when they're so intimately involved in it, but I can never respect a bloodthirsty American. That's the only person I cannot respect.
Yes. Well said. Well said.
And it is
the bloodthirst of the average
one of the
neoliberal.
biggest issues I have with American foreign policy is how cavalier it is about the destruction that so many of our policies have had internationally. Even something as simple as, you know, we had a big issue here with burn pits with Iraqi war veterans and Afghan war veterans. And we talked a lot about getting them the help they need here. But the thing nobody ever talked about was what those did to the environment in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yep.
We left. And I think our policies oftentimes are cavalier to the destruction that occurs.
A report from Iraq, and I met so many people whose family members were killed by the U.S. military or by the violence that took place in that time. Also, very elevated rates of cancer and these other indirect causes of the war. And it's kind of forgotten actually. Those people their lives go on.
Why would you forget about that?
You know, the impact that we had in a very cavalier moment. To us, we kind of the news cycle moves on. So, but you know, those memories stay, and it impacts our ability to operate there or how we're viewed there in the future. So. It's something which, you know, it's maybe very pessimistic about U.S. foreign policy in the sense that I know many, at the end of the Cold War, there's an optimistic view, we can make the world a better place. I think that's okay, it's true in some cases, but I'm a lot more hesitant to get the U.S. deeply involved because there's a very negative track record.
I think there's a mythology around sort of the Marshall Plan. And it's that, you know, after World War II, we say, oh, well, we were in war with Germany and Japan and we threw a bunch of money at it and now we're the best of friends and they buy our cars and we buy their cars.
We're the best of friends because we occupied them. We forced them to be our friends. There are multiple military installations that occurred in Germany. I mean, shit, Germany was split in half, right, between the U.S. and the USSR at that time. Russia was completely, not Russia. Japan was completely controlled by the United States. Why do you think there's so many bases there? I mean, come on, like we weren't exactly friends. It's friends with a gun in their back. That's really what it is.
And it's all lovely, and all it takes is a little bit of money and some American note.
But it looks lovely from the outside, because you can't see the gun if you just see two people standing next to each other.
How and we can turn the world into allies. I think we might have learned the wrong message from all that.
I'd also say, from reporting around the world myself, when you talk to people, this can have the wrong impact. If you have a great mythology about yourself and how you fix all the world's problems, then some people will say, how can the Americans not fix this problem? And they're like, no.
Wait, they believe us?
People believe us. And I will say to them, actually, there are a tremendous number of incredibly well-meaning people serving our country, trying to do this stuff. It's just really hard. But there's a certain story that we've told, and sometimes people really expect us to make good on it. And there are impossible promises that we can't keep.
How do you guys negotiate this pragmatic view within your own families? Because I know within, there is no, I can't get 5 Jews to agree on anything at dinner. Like, how do you negotiate that within your own families?
I think there's the personality type that tries to really hear where people are coming from and speak to...
How do you get one of those in your family?
Sheer dumb luck, or your dad is a rabbi, in my case.
Right.
And so that's what you do as the rabbi, right? And you're trying to understand where everyone in the audience is coming from. Your synagogue can be diverse, and there are people with different political and ideological perspectives. And how do you tell them the truth and stay true to that, while also saying, speaking to each of them?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a type of personality. you see it in there are different kinds of political leaders and spiritual leaders who manage to do this. And there are others who feel like, what's the hardest, sharpest, best viral slogan I can use on Twitter, right, to own the other side. Right. And by the way, when we were younger, I mean, I don't speak for you, we were like that.
I was much more hot-headed when I was younger.
Really? Yeah, when we first met.
You guys seem the opposite of hot-headed. Like,
we aged a lot.
I this as my screensaver.
I think it makes you age a lot.
This is so calming to me that what about you? Same. So let me ask you this thing, because that brings up an interesting point. What mitigated the rashness? Was it just youth? What got you guys less visual?
Yeah, I think getting older is one aspect of it, but then also, reading a lot of books, trying to see other people's perspectives, travel, that has a big impact on things, keeping an open mind, trying to treat others consistently as you want to be treated, keeping that golden rule in mind as well, too. Also, you mentioned family is interesting, because I've had conversations with family. I have family very spread out over the world, and certain experiences can be very resonant with people. I had an uncle who lives in Pakistan, and he was very critical of the U.S. war in Afghanistan. He thought that it was very, very bad. He said, he visited Kabul, and that's kind of what put this in his mind. He said, well, look, there's nothing is being built here. It's all falling apart. They didn't make anything good from their presence here. It's just very
20 years.
And then he actually visited New York one day, and he visited the subway system, and he's like, oh, now I get it, actually. It's not there on purpose. They just can't do it, actually. So, there are moments like that.
That's hilarious.
Capitalism, baby.
You look at, this is
that's really what it breaks
down to. The jokes portion,
to
which is hard in this topic.
Very hard.
And people ask me, how do I conceptualize? Hamas has, what is the New York Times has, 350 to 450 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza. And it's to think of it this way, it would cost New York City $648 quadrillion over 268 years to build that much tunnel.
Right.
It's just a really large
they would
number.
just raise the price to $1.50 a ride, and then it's
problem solved.
$2 a ride. I appreciate you both so much for coming on and having the conversation, and really just admire both of you.
Every time they get to every time they get to something interesting that they're about to say, John cut them off.
As well. It's really fantastic stuff.
I hope that was in editing, and I hope it doesn't seem like it from their faces. But he had an interesting point there. I think
just hard in this topic.
Very hard.
And people ask me, how do I conceptualize? Hamas has, what is the New York Times has, 350 to 450 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza. And it's to think of it this way, it would cost New York City $648 quadrillion over 268 years to build that much tunnel.
Right.
It's just a really large
they would
number.
just raise the price to $1.50 a ride.
That's a lot of tunnels. It's something that you can't imagine. You would have to see, just like you have to see New York City to see what kind of metroplex it is. To understand what is underneath Gaza, you would have to see it yourself. And obviously, there's only been a few 100 or 1,000 people that have actually seen that. It's incomprehensible to just talk about. Okay. Okay, perfect. Overall, good episode. I would say, not just because they talked about Israel-Palestine, but really because of these two guys. I feel like Jon is kind of in the way, and kind of tries to douse the flames as they're rising. What was that? Dude, is this doing this again? Okay, closing that window. Alright, whatever that was. Alright, so they talked about the Netanyahu interview. I wanted to watch that myself. It looks like it's about 13 minutes long. Let's see what this genocider BB said.
We turn now to the crisis in the Middle East and the war between Israel and Hamas.
I have not watched this at all.
Tel Aviv is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Welcome back to Face the Nation, sir.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Mr. Prime Minister, the U.S. is working on a hostage deal that President Biden has said would bring with it at least 6 weeks of calm. The intelligence chiefs met on Friday. Are we close to a deal?
Well, I'm not sure of the exact duration, but I can tell you that we're all working on it. We want it. I want it. Because we want to liberate the remaining hostages. We've already brought half of them back. And I appreciate the effort, the combined effort of Israel, the United States, to bring back the remaining hostages. I can't tell you if we'll have it, but if Hamas goes down from its delusional claims and goes down, can bring them down to earth, then we'll have the progress that we all want.
What specifically is holding up the deal at this point? Reportedly, this would have 30 to 40 hostages, women, elderly, wounded, released in exchange for a few hundred Palestinian prisoners being released.
Hamas started out with just crazy demands. And
crazy demands?
It's too soon to say if they're...
It's too soon.
They've abandoned them, but if they do abandon them...
They've abandoned them? They've been rejected from you, from your administration and your government several times. What do you mean?
Get into what you call the ballpark. They're not even in the city.
They're not even in the city.
But if they come down to...
you gotta remember, this guy grew up in Philly, right?
Reasonable situation, then yes, we'll have a hostage. I hope so.
There are at least 6 U.S. citizens among those being held by Hamas. For you, is the return of living hostages necessary and essential for you to declare victory in this war?
I've set 3 war goals. The first is to release the hostages. The second is to...
Okay, I think they've killed like 32 hostages or something so far. So maybe stop killing the hostages and then they can be released.
To destroy Hamas. And the third is to ensure that...
And you want to destroy Hamas. I mean, that is the slogan, right? We must destroy Hamas. You've shown that you can't even do that. The Gaza invasion has been basically an utter failure. Actually, you know what? I haven't looked at this in a while. Let's go to the Swords of Iron casualties page. And, oh, okay. They updated it. Now they include injured. So 580 casualties in total since October 7th. And then since the beginning of ground operations in Gaza, October 27th, 240 soldiers. Okay, so that number doesn't make sense to me. However, you're gonna try and like split hairs here and say that these numbers are from October 27th on, and these are from the 7th till now. Okay, you have 3,000 injured soldiers, and on top of that, you have at least almost 600 dead. Like, how do you call this a success? How do you say that you're destroying somebody when your soldiers are falling like continuously? I don't even know where was the U.S. losing that many people in a year in Afghanistan or Iraq. I imagine that was a year's worth. This is a few months worth. What are you doing?
That Gaza does not pose a threat to Israel in the future, and obviously the 3 are intertwined. And
then you have hundreds of miles of tunnels underneath that you've barely even touched. So how are you going to say that it's not going to pose a threat? It would take you years, if not decades, to go through all of that tunneling to make sure that there's nobody there, that nothing's left. In World War II, the last Japanese soldiers did not surrender until the 70s because of their tunneling structure.
Achieved basically by our very effective and often heroic military operation, and also by...
Man, he's really trying to church this thing up, and I think it's just not... It's bullshit. Oh, good. I got MoveBot going. Anyway.
We're combining the two, and I hope it yields the result. But understand that unless we have total victory, we can't have peace. We can't leave Hamas in place. We can't leave a quarter of Hamas battalions in Rafah and say, well, that's fine.
On the issue of the hostages, as you know, time is of the essence here. So if this deal happens and there are 6 weeks of calm that go with it, does that provide an opening to end this war, or will you still go into southern Gaza, into Rafah, regardless?
Yeah, well, victory is within reach, and you can't have victory until you eliminate Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization that, once we begin the Rafah operation, the intense phase of the fighting is weeks away from completion. Not months, weeks away from completion. And that is, we've already destroyed 18 out of the 24 Hamas terrorist battalions. So we have and 4 of them are concentrated in Rafah. We can't leave the last Hamas stronghold without taking care of it. Obviously, we have to do it. But understand, too, that I've asked the Army to submit to me a double plan. First, to evacuate, to enable the evacuation of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and obviously, second, to destroy the remaining Hamas battalions. That gets us a real distance towards the completion of our victory. And that, we're not going to give it up. If we have a deal, it'll be delayed somewhat, but it'll happen. If we don't have a deal, we'll do it anyway. It has to be done because total victory is our goal, and total victory is within reach. Not months away, weeks away. Once we
weeks away, you say, sir. You're going to go through 200 miles of tunnels in a couple of weeks and tell me that you're in total victory. You fucking moron. Who is falling for this? Who is watching this live on a Sunday morning and actually believing the words that are coming out of this motherfucker's mouth? That doesn't make any sense at all.
They need to see a credible and executable plan to protect civilians and the 1.4 million people who are sheltering in southern Gaza. This morning, the White House says they still have not seen such a plan, and no major military operation should proceed without it. Have you approved the plans that you said you've asked for?
Actually, Margaret, I'm going from here to a meeting with the General Staff where they're going to show me this dual plan.
Okay.
Plan to evacuate and a plan to dismantle those remaining battalions. So yes, by the way, we agree on this. I mean, we don't have to be prodded. We're on the same page with the U.S. on this because that's how we do it. The reason you have that population in Rafah is because we actually cleared them away from the other places, the zones, combat zones that we had. That's why they're there. So now there's room for them to go north of Rafah to the places that we've already finished fighting in.
That's what you're going to move.
Basically what we're going to do.
That's the plan,
yes.
To move 1.4 million people into northern Gaza. Can you guarantee that the IDF will not push?
I didn't say northern Gaza. I said
will not. Sorry,
I said
go
north
ahead.
of Rafah.
Okay. What do you mean north of Rafah? Hold the fuck up. What?
And a plan to dismantle those remaining battalions. So yes, by the way, we agree on this. I mean, we don't have to be prodded. We're on the same page with the U.S. on this because that's how we do it. The reason you have that population in Rafah is because we actually cleared them away from the other places, the zones, combat zones that we had. That's why they're there. So now there's room for them to go north of Rafah.
Hey, doofus, you fucking lying piece of shit. First of all, tell me there's no fighting in northern Gaza because why you bros dying over there, man? If that was the case, nobody would be dying in northern Gaza, right? So it sounds like you're kind of full of shit here because there's still conflict there. Just like there's still conflict all over the Gaza Strip. So you are a liar. By your own administration, by your own government website, which is very easy to pull up. Maybe they should start listing where these guys were injured. Because that would probably be a lot more insightful, actually.
We've already finished fighting it.
That's where you're going to move.
Basically what we're going to do.
That's the plan,
yes.
To move 1.4 million people into northern Gaza. Can you guarantee that the IDF will not push?
I didn't say northern Gaza. I said
will not. Sorry,
I said
go
north
ahead.
of Rafah.
Okay.
I said north of Rafah. In the northern part of the Gaza Strip, we still have fighting.
I said boo earns. Not. They're not saying boo Burns. They're saying boo Ernst. You fucking dumbass.
Going on.
Right.
But we are, that is important. It's important to understand, moving civilians out of an area that is going to be a combat zone is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Sure.
And that's what Israel is going to do.
Understood, but the IDF, can you guarantee that they won't push Palestinians out of Gaza and into Egypt? As you know, Egyptian officials have said,
once they're in Egypt, they ain't coming back.
You are putting at risk 46 years of peace.
Look, I think that the Egyptians know very well that that's not our purpose, and that won't be the result, and we're coordinating.
He's like, the Egyptians know we almost dropped a nuke on them. We'll do it again.
We're talking to the Egyptians all the time, so that's not, I don't think that's an issue. The peace between Israel and Egypt has served the interest of both countries and will continue to serve the interest of both countries. I don't think it's in any danger.
You said that victory is within reach, but U.S. intel says the IDF has only destroyed 30% of Hamas leadership, and that the amount of tunnels that Hamas uses have really only been tiny in terms of what has been destroyed by the IDF. There is growing distrust of you personally, sir. You know this, in the U.S. Congress and within the Biden White House.
Ain't nobody like you here, man.
Ally
you don't even go here.
Like this, and telling you that you need to reconsider a strategy. Isn't it worth considering?
Look, I think that the U.S. agrees with us on the goal of destroying Hamas.
Yes.
And on the goal of releasing the hostages. The decisions of how to do that are left with us, and with me and the elected cabinet of Israel. And we're doing a lot of things that we were told by the best of friends initially turned out not to be true. They said you can't enter the ground war without having enormous complications. They said you cannot fight, you can't enter Gaza City, you can't go into the tunnels, it'll be a terrible bloodbath. All of that turned out to be not true. Our soldiers are in the tunnel network. We don't have to take apart hundreds of kilometers of tunnels. We are taking apart the missile production factories that are underground, the command and control headquarters, the computers that are there, the money that is there, the weapons that are there, and the ammo that is there. We're doing that methodically. So we're
methodically,
the war. You can't substitute for the.
Does methodically include when somebody launches an RPG at a tank and then the entire building blows up with 24 people in it?
Has gone to the lengths that Israel's army has gone to clear civilians out of harm's way, even though Hamas is doing everything to keep them in harm's way.
Oh, sure, but the former head of Central Command was on this program just a few weeks ago and said basically you have not articulated any specific end game here. So, but putting that aside, I want to come back to a few different things you said.
Wait a minute, Margaret, hold on. You lob these grenades at me and you keep on moving. Well, first of all, you say there's no confidence in me. Well, the Israeli public has confidence in me. Last week,
there were massive protests throughout Israel yesterday.
Of course we have protests. We have protests. Israel is a democracy. We've had protests for 30 years.
She's fucking nuking his ass. Damn. It's about damn time somebody did that to him.
People are united as never before. Last week, they voted 99
Sir, I don't think so, man. You got your own police out there beating up people like they're at the George Floyd protests, man. Like, what do you mean you're united?
In the Knesset, for my proposal that says that the way that we have to do two things. We have to win the war, have total victory, but also not have an international dictate of a Palestinian state shoved down our throats that would endanger Israel. The people are overwhelmingly united on this. When is the last time we had 99 votes in the Knesset?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, 30 years ago. So the people are united. The policy is right. The people support it. And I intend to take it to completion because that's what we have.
This is bullshitting, man.
Because I'll tell you,
bullshitting from a whole world away, dude.
We don't win the war, and we will win this war.
One of the members of the Knesset, the former Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid, said he asked the Americans about what you just said about a unilateral declaration of recognition of Palestinian state, and he said you invented a threat that doesn't exist. There was not one official in the world that suggested unilateral recognition of the Palestinians. So, putting that aside, I want to...
actually, the Foreign Secretary of Britain just spoke about it. There have been many...
this is the U.S.
I hope that's true.
Okay.
We've heard a lot of briefings coming from the U.S. To that effect. So I hope it's true.
Yeah.
And if it's true, then that will reinforce the decision made by the government, by the people of Israel through their elected representative. And by the way, if people try to foist it on us, it would be a terrible mistake, because it would be seen as a reward for terror after the most atrocious attack committed against the Jews.
Oh yeah, you got to bring up. You got to bring that up, yeah.
And if you want peace, you shouldn't go that route. Peace will be achieved through direct negotiations between the parties down the line. I don't think the Palestinians are
down
ready,
the line. Yeah, not right now though. Not right now. We got to do the Gaza not the Gaza, the Rafah operation, and then down the line we can after we kill like 1 million people, and then kick them into Egypt. Then once nobody's there, we can negotiate peace. I got it, brother. I figured it out. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
That's the way it'll be achieved, not by international fiat.
I want to come back to something you said where you were raising questions about U.S. intelligence and advice to you from the Biden administration, where you said it was wrong. You also said there was no bloodbath.
I didn't say it was wrong. I said some good friends gave
I didn't say there was no bloodbath. Period.
Advice. It turned out to be that we performed a lot better than they anticipated. And by the way, we performed a lot better than we anticipated.
Well,
this? You call this performing well? Dude, there's a lot of people dead. I don't know, man. This looks like it sucks. This looks like a not good operation, sir. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic here, but whoa. So 3,000 people injured, 500 of them severely. I imagine they're in wheelchairs. 800 of them moderately. What does that mean? What's moderately? Like he only lost a couple toes? Like what do you mean?
On the no bloodbath,
I've seen bullshitters before. Margaret's doing a good job.
Borders went to the UN this week and said the civilian toll in Gaza is so high, they came up with a new term: wounded child, no surviving family.
Shit.
Save the Children says there are over 1,000 children who have lost a limb over these past days since the beginning of the October 7th war. What Hamas has done is horrific, but President Biden has said your actions, sir, are over the top. Aren't you concerned that
over
Israel
the top
is
for sure
creating more terrorists than it is killing?
I think that any civilian casualty is a tragedy, and I don't say that half-heartedly. I lost a brother in war. I myself was wounded while releasing hostages from a kidnap.
Did they wound your brain, man? Like, what's wrong with you?
Battle. I know what it means to lose friends and what it means to lose family members. So we don't have an argument there. But this war has been forced upon us by a cynical enemy that not only targets our civilians, has raped, beheaded, burnt babies alive.
Okay, that's all been debunked, brother.
In front of their parents and parents in front of their children.
That's actually what the IDF did once they went into Gaza.
This enemy not only targets civilians, but hides behind
this dude's just running straight up Hezbollah, like straight up Hezbollah every time he comes on American TV. I understand Face the Nation gave Margaret the opportunity to shoot him down, which I would say it's probably been about 60-40. Generally, it's like 100% Hezbollah. This time, I'd say Netanyahu probably got maybe 50-50. I think Margaret threw a lot of really good punches in here.
Civilian.
It is murder.
They're committing a double war crime. I have to come back and say that in terms of the way this battle is fought, there is no parallel to the difficulty that we face. And John Spencer, the head of urban warfare at West Point, says that no other army has faced such a task. He gives one comparison.
Yeah, that's not the question I asked, though.
Well, it is, but that's the answer. You can't say, you give immunity to the terrorists because they're hiding among civilians, and forcing
Answer the
civilians
damn
not to leave.
question.
So what do? You say, okay, we'll give you immunity. Hamas survives. Will live to fight another, to commit another massacre and another massacre. What would America do?
Yeah.
What would America do, Margaret, if you faced the equivalent of 20 9/11s, 50,000 Americans slaughtered in one day, 10,000 Americans, including mothers and children, held hostage? Would you?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Not be doing what Israel is doing? You'd be doing a hell of a lot more. And all Americans.
That's called being bloodthirsty, you fucking idiot.
That I talk to, nearly all say that. So Israel has gone to extraordinary lengths, calling up people, civilians, Palestinians in Gaza, telling them, leave your home. Sending pamphlets.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. Sending them pamphlets in the mail or just airdropping it on them and hoping that they fucking get the message randomly because you dropped it out of a fucking airplane. That's the dumbest thing that I've heard.
We have done that effort. Hamas tries to keep them at gunpoint. We'll clear them out of harm's way. We'll complete
You've let
the
him
job
talk
and
enough.
achieve total
Fucking
victory,
cut him off.
which is necessary to give a secure future for Israel, a better
It's the
future for
same
Gaza,
dumb
a better
bullshit
future for
that
the Middle East,
he
and a
repeats
setback
every
for the
time.
Iran terror axis. That's in all our interest. It's in America's interest too.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm told we are out of time. Face the Nation. We'll be back.
Should have cut him off in the middle of it.
Hope you'll stay with us.
You had your chance, Margaret. Not a bad interview. Okay, maybe kind of a bad interview. But he got a lot of his stupid talking points across. I'm surprised to see Margaret hitting him back. Also, I'm surprised to see Kristen hitting back on Meet the Press. I haven't watched the other show. I forget what the ABC one is. I think it's This Week. It's been pretty weak recently. However, here's the nightly news. I don't know if I want to watch this. Actually, you know what? I think that covers everything for now. So I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I will see you guys tomorrow or Wednesday. I don't know. Maybe Thursday. I'm sick. So, goodbye. Do check me out on the YouTube, though. And if you're on the YouTube, check me out on Twitch, because I'll be live and you can talk to me there.